I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Mr. Kerr couldn't be here, so I get to step in and do this. So bear with me. It's something when you get to be the vice chair of this committee and he's rarely ever not here. So this will be my first time getting to sit up here. Oh, great, Amanda's here. So we'll go ahead and call roll. Here. All right. Then we'll move down to approval of the minutes. Everyone's received those. Give you a moment to look through those and I'll entertain a motion. Amanda,
Make a motion to approve.
second.
Second.
Mr. Harper. All in favor? Any opposed? It passes. So tonight, I'd like to ask for a change on the agenda. With Mr. Kerr not being here, I'd like to, I can't ever get it right, whether it's postpone or table, but move elections till next month's meeting. Heather Bay's not here either. Could I get a motion on that? What's the will of the body? So, okay, so I got a motion from Mitch. Do I have a second? A second from Katie? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, so we'll move that. What I would like to do though, is I'd like to, for tonight, I'd like to, I don't know if I can do it or if I need someone to make a motion to do it, but we need a vice chair tonight, in case I need to step down for giving opinion, on some of our discussion stuff. So, is there someone willing to nominate or?
I make a motion to keep Cal as vice chair.
Okay. Second, all in favor? There we go. So that takes care of that. All right, moving forward, is there anyone here wanting to speak on something on our agenda tonight that is not dealing directly with that item? If you are, just go ahead and sign in there at the podium. Any old business to take care of, Rosalie, that you're aware of? All right, we'll move right into our new business. First item is a rezoning. Rezoning in A1 to C1, 5.72 acres on Highway 10. Mr. Moreland, if you want to come up to the podium there. All right, and you can hit the button there. There we go.
All right.
So tell us about your property.
Well, what we got going on, as y'all can see, it was a mess before. Got it all cleaned up, looking like something, and I'm needing a lay down yard to park trucks, equipment, that kind of thing. I'm moving my operation from Lebanon back to Hartsville, and got an office over next to Trousdale Pharmacy. That's our walk-in, walk-out, where we're going to tend to customers and that kind of thing. So we're already moved in over there. I think the address is 217, and but just needing a place where park the equipment, park trucks and stuff as they come in and out every day. So I'm trying to work to get that cleaned up.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Moreland? What you got?
Is that in the flood zone, that area?
Yes, sir. It is in the flood zone, and Jim's already gave us an elevation out there that we're shooting for, a bench, and we're gonna get that. The area that we're gonna continue to park on will be out of the flood zone. But I've got to kind of see what's gonna happen here before I spend a little bit too much more money on bringing material in to get it out of the flood zone. But yes, I plan to, the area that we're gonna park and lay down on will be out of the flood zone.
You can hit your button. All right, is there any other questions for Mr. Moreland? Rosalie, what do you have for us?
Okay, if you look in your packets, I did include a map, a zoning map for you. So they're wanting to go to C1. You can see along Highway 10. Right now, they're currently A1. It's that blue piece of property there in the middle. There's C1 at the corner of Fort Blunt and Highway 10. There's also a large section off of, I believe that is, one moment. Old Lafette Road, thank you very much, is also C1. So looking at this, a lot of R2, M1. There is C1 in the area. We also talked before about these large roads having commercial property and having a corridor. With him having the, we had that discussion about him being in the flood zone. And you are allowed to build up property if it's in the flood zone, compacting the soil and everything and creating pads, and it will rise up out of the flood zone. He is getting a certificate of elevation for that, so that he makes sure that it's not in the flood zone. Now, this is just a rezoning. So, anytime that he would want to build something there, he would have to come back and get a building permit. He would also have to, since it is going to be a commercial piece of property, bring forward a site plan, which would come back before you.
Any questions for Rosalie? All right, Amanda? Okay,
But he
Yes.
doesn't have to have anything for parking trucks. He don't have to have any kind of site plan or anything there, right?
During the rezoning process, no, sir.
But once we rezone it, if he wants to park trucks, he'll have to come back.
Yes, sir. Just like what we did up at the corner of 231 and 25, where they have a trucking hub. They had to bring forward a site plan, letting us know like how many spaces they're going to need. If they're going to be having any other type of like office structure there, they would have to come forward and bring a site plan for you.
all right, I'll entertain a motion. Remember, we can't approve or disapprove. We can send with a favorable, not favorable, or neutral. Amanda?
I make a motion to send to the county commission with a favorable recommendation.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Second with Cal. All in favor? Any opposed? It passes. So
Thank you all.
that'll be at this month's meeting.
All right, thank you.
All right, next up is rezoning of A1 to R1. Earl Miller.
I am not Earl Miller, but I am here representing Mr. Miller.
All right,
And so Mr. Miller is actually my next door neighbor. He's a good neighbor. He's an older fella and got some health issues. His daughter is looking at building a house there next to him, but he doesn't have enough land. He's only got 4 or 5 acres. So they're looking to rezone this to R1 to be able to split it in half and her put a residence on it.
any questions for Jim? Rosalie?
Thank you. So again, I've included a nice little zoning map. You can see the blue parcel of land that is notated as being A1 right across the street on Highway 10, right across Highway 10. It's not necessarily a street, but there, all that section of land right there is zoned R1. Further on down, it's R1, and then along where you see Beech Grove, that big section of land right there is also zoned R1. The current acreage, according to TN Property Viewer, of this parcel of land is 5.5 acres. Now, I know the intent is to subdivide this into 2 lots, and they will have to get like a separate septic system. I'm sure they're identifying the soils area and getting the applicable road frontage that they would need.
Any questions for Rosalie? Do you have anything else, Amanda?
I don't.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to send this forward with a favorable recommendation.
Second by Katie. All in favor? Any opposed? No. Moving on to our next item, rezoning of M1 R2 to R2.
Hi. I'm Chelsea Anderson, and we purchased this lot to possibly put some houses on. And Matthew the Carmens are surveying for us right now. It's not complete yet, but the property is mostly R2, and we're wanting, some of it's M1, and we were trying to get it all R2 zoned so we could do that.
Okay. Help me out here, Rosalie, because I've got Jeremy Barnes as the applicant.
Jeremy Barnes wasn't able to be here, and they both own the property, Jeremy Barnes and Jordan Barnes, as well as Chelsea Anderson and her hubby.
Okay.
And I
Alright.
do have a copy of the warranty deed.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, Rosalie?
Thank you. Not only are they asking to have this rezoned, but they are asking to annex part of the property into the city limits. Now, looking at the zoning map that I provided for you, there is a section of R2 that fronts Herod Lane. The majority of the property that fronts on Cemetery Road is the M1 parcel of the land. And the city limits basically just kind of bisects that parcel there. When Mr. Barnes came into the office and was talking about rezoning this piece of property, wanting it to go to R2, I specifically asked him to go and speak with the water department to see, okay, if you're wanting to do R2, we need to look at what the infrastructure looks like. We need to know, are there water lines? Where are the water lines? Are there sewer lines? Because if you're in the city limits, more than likely you need to have sewer. And he did speak with the water department. The information that I received, and I called Tony Crook, who's the superintendent over there at the water department, that you can see a little road over there going on the left across Cemetery Road. That is where the sewer ends. And there's also sewer on Herod Lane as you go around the corner there above the 2 of the R2. Sewer is there as well. And then there are lines, there are fire hydrants as well along Cemetery Road. So there would be fire protection as well. There is a fire hydrant close to where the sewer ends. And there's also a fire hydrant further down Cemetery Road.
So that is a 6-inch line then?
Yes.
Any questions for Rosalie? Amanda?
So procedurally, MTAS and CTAS have annexation best practices. Gone are the days where, cities or counties can go in and just annex independently. This is by owner request. So at this point in time, this is going up for discussion to the governing body. If this passes through this body tonight, a plan of services will need to be created for consideration up to the governing body. If the governing body reviews and decides to go through with the annexation portion of, I'm just talking about the annexation portion of the request, of the annexation portion, at that point, it gets remanded back down to the planning commission where you all will have another set of public hearings for the plan of services. And we would also take up the question again of rezoning the property. So these two questions kind of go together in one action. So tonight, it's a question of whether or not you think this is an appropriate or reasonable request for it to travel up to the governing body. And if the governing body agrees with you all, then it will come back to you all for further study and discussion with the plan of services that'll be written up by staff for your consideration in the months coming. So this is one step out of probably at least 100. It's going to feel like.
Okay, because that's new, because we annexed a piece of property just last year and it never came back to us. It went through the commission, and when the commission said yes, that was it.
Okay, then I would defer to your legal counsel and how it was done before then.
Okay, so we'll need to reach out to Brandon about that, Rosalie. Because once it comes back to us, we don't have any legal, I mean, it's already rezoned. If the annex is already, we don't have authority to say, no, you can't annex it. So what would we be doing at that point?
I'll defer to your county attorney.
Okay. All right. So we'll treat this as a regular rezoning, and whether we agree it should be annexed or not. Rosalie stated that it does have all the infrastructure in place for 2 areas to feed sewer to it and a 6-inch water line. Any other questions? Then I'll entertain a motion. Okay, Mr. Harper gives me a motion to take it with a favorable. Do I have a second? Mr. Milner gives a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. So just like I told Mr. Moreland, this month's meeting, this will go before the full commission. We'll have work session next Monday, and then the actual voting on it will be the 4th Monday of the week or the month. You might want to attend work session to answer any questions, but definitely be there on the 4th Monday. All right, next up is the sketch plat, major subdivision on Morrison.
Okay, this is Mr. Goch's property that we have batted back and forth 3 or 4 times. And so we're looking at going with 6 R1 lots. Once again, this is just a sketch plat. It doesn't have a whole lot of anything on it. He understands that he's going to have to do some infrastructure improvements for the water line, and that's going through engineering and everything. And so pretty well straightforward, I think, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have any questions for Jim? Rosalie?
So you're saying that there's engineering being done. He's going to be improving the water lines going up there to Morrison Street. Is that correct?
I don't think it's the lines. I think it's actually a pump redoing down there near the Morrison Street tank. Is a pump to increase pressure in that part of the system.
Do you currently know what the size of the water line is going up there?
To the best of my knowledge, what we've got down here is a 6 inch, and I know we've got at least a 6 inch because there's a fire hydrant below us and above us on Morrison Street, so there's got to be at least a 6 inch. And I think that's what we got from Tony, was that it's a 6 inch across the street and an 8 inch sewer line on our side.
Do we know what the gallons per minute for the,
I
Fire
cannot-
hydrant.
I can't answer that. No, I don't know.
gotcha. I know I've been asked that going forward on, and Morrison Street was specifically mentioned that we take in consideration the fire department and whether or not they would be able to service the area. So that's why I'm asking these questions about what's the fire hydrant and is there,
That's
Fire protection.
totally fine, totally fine. And once again, even if I answer it right now, I'm sure it's going to change based upon that pump that they're putting in to increase the water pressure. So that will be a question as we get the engineering a little further down the line.
thank you. So in looking at this, he is creating these lots and the zoning for these lots are R2, correct?
It's my understanding that they were R1 according to the map.
R1. Thank you so much.
We've designed them to meet R1 specifications anyway. So if it's R2, it's just a little bit bigger than what R2 allows. Yes, to the best of my knowledge, according to the map, unless it's been updated and is not online for some reason, it's R1.
Anything else, Rosalie?
No, thank you.
Amanda?
No, sir.
Any other questions for Jim? I'd like to think with engineering and putting in a new pump that hopefully they'll get enough volume to take care of the fire issue. I entertain a motion. So this would be an approval or a denial of the sketch plat.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. Katie seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Mr. Noller says no. Right. Majority rules, it passes. All right. So that brings us to our discussion item for the night. So Codes and Zoning has been working for over a year now to work with Rick Gregory, who the county hired, to consolidate our county and city ordinances into one document. Currently, only one of them is actually searchable. So it means you have to go line by line looking for whatever you're trying to find yourself online, which is a real pain. I ran into that tonight. But also we found in this process, a lot of our ordinances have not been updated and state law has now trumped what our ordinance state. So there's no reason for it to even be in there anymore. It's a contradictory. So in the process, we were pulling some of those out also. We found another one tonight through BZAs. So we'll need to get that changed based on what was sent out to everyone to look over. Rick, if you would, I'll give you the floor and we can kind of go over what we've done and kind of what changes were and weren't made and why. Podium, sir. It's kind of high points.
Good evening. I know many in the room. I'm one of the Gregory's.
I'm sorry, Rick. Let me go ahead and introduce, Rick was our planning consultant for many years. Has been working with our ordinances and complaining about them for many years. So that was one of the reasons that we chose him for this project because he had already made enough notes that he was way ahead of anyone else who would jump in on this. Not to mention all his experience both in Lebanon and in Hartsville and elsewhere continuing. So with that being said, Rick, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Oh, thank you. I've been around Hartsville all my life. My parents ran the dry cleaners on Jones Avenue, and my uncle had a barber shop across the street. So I'm long haired in Trousdale County. I've got roots. My name's Rick, one of the many Gregories in Trousdale County and parts nearby. As David said, the task of combining the zoning ordinances involved trying to meld together the two different approaches in the documents that you've been operating under for many years. I think Bill Veazey created the documents, and Bill's William is a planner that was formerly with the state planning office and represented a lot of communities in Middle Tennessee. I think Bill is in West Tennessee now. But both of them are good documents. They are well written and they've done a good job, but the task of putting them together meant having to pick and choose in some cases which setback to honor, for instance, and yard requirements between different categories. Gas station, gas pumps, pump islands, for instance. In one ordinance, they were supposed to be set back 35 feet from the right of way and another 40 feet. That's one example. And in those cases, the committee chose to use the more restrictive. So in that case, for that application, it would be 40 feet inside the city or outside. And I want to make a point of clarification. There was a mention a minute ago of annexation into the city of Hartsville. There is no longer a city of Hartsville. It was consolidated years ago. Now there is an urban services district, which is the old city limits, and a general services district, which is the old county balance of the county outside the old city limits. And that's the way the ordinance is written. That's how it's reflected. The old Hartsville zoning ordinance would reflect the different zoning types with an H to distinguish from the county zoning districts with a T. And as you look through the document, those different zoning districts apply to the urban services district or the balance of the county. What am I looking for? The unconsolidated part of Trousdale County. And I made a list of things that were addressed in the ordinance, trying to reflect and give a roadmap basically of the changes that were made. And I'll just run through the list, and it's in order in the way the document is presented. Definition section, blended definitions from both existing zoning ordinances to create one inclusive set of definitions. There's an added section for use classification that is necessary to complement the use matrix that's a part of the document, a part of the zoning ordinance as well. And the use matrix shows up in Appendix A in the document. In general provisions section, blended differing provisions to reflect one set of general provisions. And that's where things like the gas pump canopy would crop up and have to be addressed. Which is it? Is it 35 or 40 feet? In this case, it'll be 40 feet. And that's just one easy example. Supplementary provisions reconcile the differing requirements except for requirements that were tied to the different jurisdictions and were too well established or distinct to remove. Mobile home parks, for instance, there's a long list of requirements for a mobile home park to be developed in the city. And there's a almost equally long set of requirements for a mobile home park to be developed in the general services district. So those remain distinct. There wasn't an easy way to blend the two and come up with a single requirement for mobile home parks that we could come up with. Zoning district section is now to distinguish between urban services, as I said, with an H, and general services with a T. And we added a section for planned unit development districts, residential and commercial mixed use. So if someone comes to you that is requesting a zoning change, you will then have, if this is adopted, you will then have the option of a planned unit development district instead of what is often called black letter. If you don't want it to be R3, for instance, it may qualify as a residential PUD. The density is the same as an R3. So there's no increase in density for a residential PUD. There's certainty of what will be developed on that property as a PUD with the site plan as it travels through the process. Move the floodplain regulations to Appendix C, stays intact, and there were some language changes to make it fit into the combined document. But as far as the requirements, didn't mess with those. That comes down from the feds to the state to the county. Exceptions and modifications section reconcile to encompass both jurisdiction requirements unchanged for the most part. Administration and enforcement is reconciled for both jurisdictions, also largely unchanged. And that's where the appeals board and different requirements come in for enforcement of the different parts of the zoning ordinance. And as I mentioned, there is a new Appendix A that is a use matrix that houses uses permitted and prohibited in the differing zoning districts in the general services district and in the urban services district. There is an Appendix B that is the table that shows setbacks, lot coverage, lot size, different things that go with placing a building on a lot or creating a lot. Those are now encompassed in the table at Appendix B, where before there were individual requirements within the different zoning districts. So if you looked at an R1 in the old county ordinance, it's going to be different from R1 in the old city ordinance. And those differences will show up in the matrix. We didn't change that. If the requirement for a creation of a lot today under the existing ordinance is 10,000 square feet in a particular district, that remains. That didn't change. It stays as it was and as it is. And as I said, we added an Appendix C for floodplain that moves it out of the body of the document and attaches it as an appendix to the document so that the next time flood regulations are changed, you don't have to bother the body of the document itself. You just change out the information that's contained in Appendix C. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Happy to answer questions. As David said, we've been at this for quite a while. I don't remember when I started working for Trowser County, but I made the mistake of saying these two need to be put together. And years later, the phone rang and said, "We need you to put these together." And I went, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that." It's been a good project, and I think the product will reflect that. It will be, I think, easier to use and easier to understand, whether you're administering the ordinance or whether you're looking at it as a developer or a property owner. I think it will be helpful in a lot of ways. Today, it's kind of hit and miss what you can find. You have to dig through what's there. And I think this makes it easier to understand and find what you're looking for.
One other thing I wanted to add, when Rick was talking about how the committee went and used the more restrictive and looking at the charter and the way that the two documents were brought in to the new metro, it says specifically that when any one ordinance was to conflict with the other, always take the most restrictive. So in doing this process, that's the guideline we used. So where he said, you know, it was 30 and then 40, well, we just did the 40. We did that with parking spots. When there was a more restrictive requirement, we went with the more restrictive. Of course, all those items can all be given variances if needed by case basis. But I'd like this document to be good enough that the BZA doesn't have to give a variance every time. Otherwise, we need to change however that's written to fit that. Rick, one thing I would like for you to do is if you would go a little more detail into the plan unit development that we're going to be adding to we're proposing to add to the zoning coming out of codes and zoning. That is an extra zone that we're proposing. If the full commission approves that, then that'll be something else for us to look at. And I'll let you explain that.
Well, it's a different process than you have today. It winds up at the same place potentially, but as a submittal project comes through today, the rezoning request is before you and sent to the commission for approval, and then the site plan or subdivision comes through later for approval. In the case of a plan unit development, they come together. It goes up as a rezoning request based on a particular development, and it travels with that zoning request and with that action. If approved, it's bound to the zoning. So if you have a request for a residential PUD that has 50 units, whether it's a subdivision lot, 50 units, or apartments or condos with 50 units contained on a particular property with a site plan, that travels with that zoning and stays as a 50-unit development and can be built out as long as it stays that way. If it needs to change, if somewhere down the road the owner or developer decide to change it, they bring it back. It's not that they can change it on site or at their discretion. It's bound to that zoning, and any change significant change would come back before the planning commission and the county commission for approval. And, you know, if it stays within the guidelines that they've shown with a preliminary master plan, then they can, within reason, move roads or buildings on site if they run into a particular problem of locating a building on a site for some reason. That shouldn't have to come back. But if they decide that 50 units are not enough, I want 60 units, then that plan needs to be modified and brought back through the same process. It would be treated as a new zoning request at that point. And it's also set up so that there can be a mixed use or commercial component to it. So if someone wants to develop 10 acres and they have road frontage on Highway 25 or Highway 231 or Highway 10 or Chute Road or whatever road frontage they have, if they decide that they want to have a commercial section on the front of the property and residential behind, they can do that with this mixed use PUD also. So it doesn't have to be separated into a commercial zone like you have on the books today.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Is it a correct statement? And if a project were to fall through, that property's zoning would revert back to its prior zoning district if it were?
No.
So Rick,
No.
correct me if I'm wrong. So what would happen is the PUD state, so I buy 11 acres. and I come up with this great idea to do with this 11 acres, and I have my site plan, my proposal. I send that through. It gets passed. I run out of funding. I can't do that beautiful project. I sell it to somebody else. They can either pick up that project or it reverts to the previous zone before that project.
No,
No?
no,
Okay.
no. If the PUD goes through and it's approved, then that project stays as approved until it changes by the bodies that approved it. So if they had a 50-unit development approved for construction and there's a change in ownership or change in direction of the development, whatever, and they decide they don't want to do the 50, it doesn't matter who owns it. The property is bound by that development proposal. And it's only a proposal until the permits are issued. If the permits are issued, then they are allowed what was approved, the 50 units, for instance. But if they don't want to do that, if they want to change it, then it has to go back through the process and submittals to the planning commission, to the county commission for approval again, if they want to change it. But a change in ownership or some time goes by, there's nothing that changes that until an action by the approving bodies.
So then it actually does become its own zoning. So it doesn't revert back to anything. And I've been off on that through this process, not quite understanding that it is a locked in, whatever that PUD is, that is the new zoning for
Well,
that property.
Just as today, if a property comes through and it gets rezoned R3, for instance, that R3 zoning stays until something changes it. And you don't know when it's zoned, what's going to be built on it. But the property is still zoned R3 until it changes.
And so that's really the benefit to the county. Instead of having these R3s come through and no one knows, you just have to assume the worst, that's what's, the highest occupancy, that's what's going to go on that R3. Now someone can come in and give us an idea. So now when the commission asks, well, what are you going to do with your property? It's a legitimate question because they have that site plan in front of them and this is what we're going to do. Are there any other questions for Rick? I really hope everyone's had a chance at least to glance through the digital copy to kind of see the matrix. And, we already had a matrix that was tied to our existing, but it's a lot easier to source through the newer edition. And the combining of these appendages will make it a lot easier going forward as far as updating these zonings. Because if you'll notice in the current one, it's got the whole first page is amend, but the amendments aren't actually in the ordinance. It hasn't actually been changed. You have to go look up those amendments. So this will update everything to current zoning. We have found a few things that still have to be adjusted. And by law, before the county court can vote on it and pass it, the final version has to come back through us. So I know for a fact there's a section that's going to have to be adjusted that we determined tonight. The meat packing in the county, unless you corrected it on your end, there is a section that the state has passed in their agricultural legislation they passed that allows meat packing in the county on agricultural property. And we need to make sure that's not in the finished product.
Okay.
We never addressed that in any of the meetings. So I don't know if you caught it, but
No.
we need to make sure that that's been addressed. So what this body really is tasked with tonight is one, kind of understanding what we're doing. If there aren't any other corrections, well, no, this correction would mean it's going to have to come back here anyway. So what we would do tonight, if you guys are comfortable with it and you're happy with the product, we can send it on to the full commission. There's going to be a lot of discussion and talking. Mr. Beller has reached out and he's wanting to go through it himself more thoroughly, making sure there's nothing else that needs to be cleaned up on the first draft through. So there's going to be at least 2 work sessions where we're going to be discussing, asking questions, talking about it for the commission. But if you guys need more time, we can bring it back through next month And if you have more questions or that you find as you've gone back through it all, we can do that also. So it's really what's the will of the body of what you guys want to do. I would like to give Amanda a chance to, have you had a chance to look at any of it or? I'd love to hear your opinion on the progress and if you caught anything that we need to address.
Thanks.
Rosalie?
I'd like to say that I know that there are some things that do need to be updated. As we said, this one, and then also the swimming pool regulations as well. It doesn't meet, code ordinances. So we need to, and I would recommend that we allow those that aren't here this evening to really dive in and give their opinions as well on this document. And it is an excellent effort. Thank you, sir.
One thing, David, that needs to be addressed also, the zoning map now shows city zones like R1 through industrial and county zones R1 ag through industrial. And it doesn't distinguish on the index. It just has city and county. And in the zoning ordinance, there's a distinction of H in front of the urban services zones and T before the general services districts. And those need to be reconciled. If the body recommends the zoning ordinance, would you please also recommend the zoning map that travels with it to reflect those zoning districts on the map as they're defined and described in the zoning ordinance that you're looking at? The county general services districts will have the T, and the urban services, the old city zones, will have an H before them. Nothing changes on the map other than the index showing an H with the city zones and a T with the county zones.
Rosalie, would that be a good time to update that map?
It would be, I think also too, with the addition of the PUD, we need to come up with, okay, what does that look like for urban services and for the general services? Being able to update the zoning map, we've been trying to get that done. Right now, it is definitely another laborious task.
I was just gonna ask, when, have we looked about, updating that and maybe digitalizing so you can zoom in a little bit? That map's hard to see, as you know, when we get down to the actual property itself. If it be something we can, a lot of digital now, you can zoom in closer to what track is what.
We've been working with the iWork and talking about the GIS and trying to update the rezoning, and that's part of the process that we're talking with them about. They may have like an additional service that we can purchase in order to get that updated. I've been speaking with Amanda about how we can get that information. We've gotten our shape files from GNRC and trying to move forward with that. Again, some of that information is not correct. And so I would hesitate to just do a blanket upload because it isn't correct.
So that'll be something that codes and zoning will be looking into, because there'll be money that'll be needed to be requested for those services. So those will be budget amendments that'll have to be pushed forward. There's a couple of things. This was kind of the first step. I'll bring it back up later with next month, but Codes and Zoning has requested planning to take up the creating of a general plan to update the existing growth plan that is already on the books. It is grossly outdated, both the city and the county ones. Rick has suggested that we not try to update the growth plan because of all the extra state hurdles that are involved in that. But a general plan is something that we could do in-house for the county and would help. I made a mention during the last commission meeting of kind of the lack of planning that we have with a lot of these R3s that are just popping up anytime someone requests them. And you're getting these apartment complexes dotting the city, and they're starting to connect into just like East Main is starting to become just a road of little quadplexes down through there. And if that's what the county wants, and that's how we want the city to look, that's great. But let's figure that out before we're left with something that we can't change. So, there'll be money needed for that, but that's not something any group of us here are, I think, capable of doing. I believe Amanda has some experience in doing that, so that'll be great, looking for some guidance there. But that is, like I said, this ordinance here, cleaning all this up was our first step. It'd be nice for me, kind of what I'm looking at is kind of my legacy of leaving Hartsville with a plan for the next 20 years. And if this body can help in that, I would greatly appreciate it. That's kind of our job as planning commission. It's kind of in the name. Any other questions? Yes.
Do we need to, before we vote, pass this on, do we need to wait till we get this other stuff put in it, or go ahead and pass it on forward?
Well, Rosalie was recommending that we postpone to let the other members be here. This is an important thing that we're doing. If that being the case, then the things that I know that Rosalie and I both have already found, we can get those changed and addressed before it's brought back for next. So we can just do this as a discussion, and we can do a formal presentation next month and then move it on from there, if that's the will of this body.
I recommend we move it on to next month.
That does not hold up you from work sessions with the full commission on reviewing this document? So I know that your intention was to.
No, because this body has to see the final result.
Right. Okay.
So anything that goes to the commission and gets changed, when it comes back here, would be
Okay.
the final vote. So, and we were planning on doing at least 2 work sessions, discussing it, depending on what that body wants to do. But we were wanting to provide, Rick said that he'd be willing to attend, to answer questions. I know Mr. Beller's still wanting some time to go through. So I think this really works out for everything. We've spent way too much time on this to rush this and it not be perfect when we get to actually make a vote on it. So, that should not slow that down at all. Do I have a second on Mr. Miller's? So Katie seconds it. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. That's what we'll do with that. Thank you for coming tonight, Rick.
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any reports from the planning office?
Actually, Enbridge has pulled a permit. They've applied for a building permit for the solar array. We're still waiting on some more documentation, and I know that they have plans to start breaking ground the end of October. So just, again, it's a busy, busy time in our county.
Do you have anything, Amanda?
I know.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right. Katie's in with the seconds tonight. All adjourned.